All right. Thanks to everyone joining us today or in the future. My name is Daniel. This is Navigating, what are we calling this? Navigating Consciousness?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Yeah, there's a few things I wanted to get into today. There's no one in studio today. The past few weeks, I've had people in here, and we've looked at their human design, and I've given them some work. Yeah, just me and John today. So if anyone out there would like me to take a look at their human design or work on something for them, very happy to just drop your birth info in our chat, and I will get to it. Something that's been on my mind a lot recently has been about, like health, but specifically about how, like the health of our, how can I put this? Our skin, right? Our skin is naturally conductive. So our skin is designed to conduct energy, to conduct the sun's energy in the form of heat, all these things. And when we wear clothing, that conductivity is going to be affected. Some fabrics are hyperconductive, actually more conductive than our skin. And some fabrics are much less conductive, and that creates static, like literal static, right? It's like the energy that your body is trying to conduct. You can think about, we're already at a bit of a disadvantage because we're upright. So we're kind of moving through the world, and we're getting like a full blast. Whereas if we were horizontal, we'd be much more streamlined. So, yeah, we already kind of have to cope. We have to deal with things that other life on this planet doesn't have to, because almost nothing is vertical, outside of, plants, obviously. But, and that actually, there's a whole interesting kind of discourse in the theosophist literature, like Rudolf Steiner and those folks, talking about how the human and the plant are inverse. So, like the plant goes upright, and then the animal goes horizontal, and then with the human we're back to upright, but we haven't returned to the alignment of plants. It's like we're 180 degrees separate from them, right? It's like this to this is 90, and then another 90-degree turn to give us our upright posture. So anyway, so I was thinking a lot about fabrics and textiles and the clothes that we wear, and how it affects our conductivity, and just how important it is, especially now, to be as conductive as possible, to let things kind of roll over you as much as possible. The sun is putting out a tremendous amount of energy, and the electromagnetic field of the planet is the lowest it's been since it's been studied, which hasn't been that long, but it's a thing. And so a lot of solar, charged particles coming from the sun, entering into the earth, hitting our bodies in volumes that is unusually high. And that would be why, and I mean, yeah, like there's the ozone layer, but it's more. So, that's why it's like, everyone's walking around with, SPF 120 or whatever, because the sun is so strong, and, incidence of skin cancer and, all these other things, damage to the eyes. So yeah, the clothes that we wear, is, it's actually a very, very necessary part of our strategy of staying healthy during this time. Ra Uru Hu, the receiver of human design knowledge, he said at some point that the heat that we would be experiencing, because again he was talking back in the 90s, mostly the 90s and the early 2000s, that the heat is very necessary for the mutation. It's like they say that life started in this sort of like petri dish, but it's a high temperature. Like you need the heat, you need the energy to generate all that mutative pressure and activity. So the Earth getting hotter is actually, from his perspective, very necessary. And it's just another thing that there's nothing that we can do about it, nothing that we need to do about it. It's actually very necessary. So, so with all that in mind, I mean, there's things that are needed, right? There's things that we need to do for ourselves. There's the spiritual work, the energetic work, the clearing stuff that I do and other people do. That's very important. But in terms of your own strategy, for surviving this period, and it is about survival, right? It's mutative pressure. It's about evolution. It is about survival, very much about survival. And our clothes are actually, gonna play a role there. And so, the more natural fabrics, cotton is good. Cotton is about as conductive as our skin. The blast techno. Sorry, Allison, a friend of mine just joined in. She's saying something about blasting techno. Anyway, so cotton's good. It's about as conductive as our skin, but there's issues with the chemicals that are used to grow cotton. It's a very dirty process because it's not food, so they can use things on it that they can't use on food crops because it's not going into our body, but then we're wearing it on our skin, which is very absorbable. So organic cotton would be really the only option there. Linen is actually more conductive than our skin, from what I understand. Wool, all forms, alpaca wool, maybe more than sheep's wool, but wool in general is also hyper conductive, and hemp. Hemp is very good. Hemp is very, very, very conductive. So just make good choices for yourself. I don't necessarily know who my audience even is at this point. I'm guessing it's a lot of people like myself who have been on this path for a while and are already aware of a lot of these things. But it's good to be reminded. It's easy to fall into the, it's like, it's 50% cotton, 50% polyester. Like, it's a nice looking thing. It's from a reputable company. Like, there's things, that we kind of get into. But like I'm really making a concerted effort to only wear like wool and linen these days. The shirt that I'm wearing is organic cotton. The underwear also clearly, that's important. So staying away from the synthetics in terms of what you wear under your clothes. In the body talk world, which is the system that I trained in before I started doing things my own way, there's a lot of conversation about bras kind of specifically being very problematic, especially when there's an underwire, because it messes with the conductivity, and that could be a contributing factor towards the development of breast cancer and this kind of stuff. So finding alternatives, as many as you can, and really paying attention to what's going on top of your skin, because it's conductive. It's conducting all the energy that we're being bombarded with, and that's only going to increase, over time. None of this is going to get easier, and quite the opposite, right? We're going to be under more pressure. So making yourself as streamlined as possible, as conductive as possible, minimizing the drag, as much as possible as we move through this, is going to be helpful. With that being said, I wanted to do a bit of work So when I started this podcast, like the first couple of episodes, the way that I was working had a lot to do with systems, and a system is anything with multiple inputs, right? So, sports teams, you can, anyone who's watched me already knows about these things, but I'll just quickly go over. So, sports teams are systems, right? Like the New York Yankees has been the Yankees since the 1880s. Totally different groups of athletes, owners, managers, coaches, fans, et cetera, and it's still the Yankees, right? And so that has to do with just the energy going in, right? As long as fans keep showing up, and as long as players want to play, and as long as there's, people who want to advertise, and there's a stadium, and there's all these things, then the New York Yankees can be the Yankees. Same as any corporation, same as any nation, same as any religion, same as anything that requires a lot of people to believe in its truth, right? But it's a legal fiction. All these things are legal fictions. If people stop going to watch baseball, then these systems no longer get the energy that they need, and then they don't exist, or they don't exist in the same way. What happened, it's been a couple of months now, I guess, maybe a month and a half, is through the work that I do, there was a particular client that I was working on, and it just became very clear that the sort of frequency holder of all these systems was no longer operating on this planet, that the Earth was waking up and had basically removed the conditions that allowed for this presence, that was basically, because all these systems, how they worked was they would put pressure on you, right? If you were a part of that system, then it was very important to that system that you stay a part of that system. So you have like tradition, and you have pressure coming from all sorts of angles, mostly other people who are also connected to that system, or Matrix, the Matrix movie, it was kind of a documentary in a certain way, because it was really like, if you're connected to the Matrix, then you can kind of be taken over by it and used as an agent of it. And these systems operate in a very similar way. So with like religions and stuff, that's very clear. There's a lot of guilt and judgment, and it's like hard to remove yourself from these systems that are deeply entrenched and that your whole family is a part of, or there's whatever, the hometown, the place that you're from, there's all this pressure coming from all these places, and it's all coming from these systems because they really want us to stay connected, to put their energy there, to develop a world that works for them rather than what works for us. So anyway, long story short, these systems are no longer operational. And that also means that new systems can't be created. So I would work with larger groups of people by creating a system that could be plugged into by the people who are like watching this podcast, for example, and then they would get the benefit of that work. But I wasn't able to create those anymore either. So I didn't really know how I was going to work on larger groups of people anymore, and I was just kind of looking at like the one-on-one stuff, which is impactful and good, but I think I found a way through it, and so I'm gonna work on that. I'm gonna work on that today. All these systems that are now gone, that are no longer operational, have put a tremendous amount of conditioning into the central nervous systems of humans, right? So the people on the planet have every single one of us, except for those who have been born over the past 6 weeks, are firmly conditioned by the presence of the systems, right? The political system that we grew up in, the religious system we grew up in, the educational system that raised us, essentially, the dietary systems, right? The food. Like when I was a kid, it was about the food pyramid, right? That's a system. That's a belief system. It was a belief that if you based your diet almost entirely on grain, that you would be healthy. There's still a lot of people who think that, like that fiber is really good for you. But anyway, And this is what I'm saying, right? Like, even though that system is, like defunct, I mean, that system ended quite a while ago, really. The conditioning that people experienced, right? The beliefs that people had about it maintained in their nervous system. They were habits. They couldn't change it even if they wanted to. And there's nothing, because they couldn't change it even if they wanted to, there's no want to change. They don't want to change because they can't, right? Because they're so hardwired to believe that this is correct. Everybody, all the clients who I work on, everybody in general, still has the aspects of these systems operating in their central nervous system, and it makes it hard to change. So what I thought I would take a look at today is, so I can't work through a system anymore. I can't look at a system that people are connected to and sort of, remove that system or remove them from that system or any of this. But I can connect with everyone who has a certain kind of conditioning, right? Because these systems, when you think about like the Catholic Church, I mean, that's a system of like 1 billion people, right? Some more committed than others, but still, conditioned, right? It's old. It's been around for a very long time. And it's also clearly on the way out. I mean, it has really no authority outside of the power that it can wield. It's rich. There's a lot of wealth, a lot of history, a lot of political connections that it can draw on. But yeah, so it's like I can look at what are the conditions that a lot of people have, and we can work on kind of clearing those conditions for as many people as possible. I wanted to, I'm just going to take a little drink of tea here. Money and wealth and abundance, these are things that are still, and maybe even more than ever, challenging. A lot of people are not able to acquire the wealth that they need to live a halfway decent life. The abundance exists, right? It exists all around us. We're in maybe the most abundant period ever, potentially. I don't really know. And in terms of the coming age, 2027, it's defined by the 55th gate, which is the gate of abundance, which I spoke to the past couple of episodes, just about, the sort of difference between the cross of planning and the cross of the sleeping phoenix, and that 2027 really marks this shift. So, and I think there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear that, or maybe fear is maybe not the right word, but expectation that we're going to lose a lot of this stuff. That a lot of this stuff it's not sustainable, and it's not. The real estate is the way things are, for sure, right? It's not. You can't have a country where no one owns their home, or very few do, right? And where the majority are, vacation rentals, Airbnbs and like all this stuff. And then, the housing that's available that isn't in these like markets where people are, renting out, their houses for, vacation rentals and whatever. I mean, it's not necessarily places a lot of people can live, because there's not a lot of opportunity there. There's no jobs. I can work anywhere, but not a lot of people can, right? They need the access. I'm also, I'm a 4/6 profile. I like being in my own space. I'm aloof. I'm an Aquarian. All these things. But not everyone's like that, right? A lot of people need, you need community. You need to be with people. People you can share things with. people you can share food with, people you can do things with, and a lot of these places, if you're of a certain, if you're of a certain frequency, you're going to want to be in a place where there's people like-minded people. So anyway, the abundance exists, but not everyone has access, and that's very much the detriment of the 55th gate. And I want to work on that. I want to give as many people as much access to the abundance that exists, because it is limitless. We can all have it all, but it has to be the all that's right for you, right? So it's not about everyone having the fanciest car. Obviously, it's not about everyone having the fancy cars or like the Gucci bags or any of that stuff. I mean, if you want that, you can have that, but I don't think most people, when it comes down to it, really want that. They've just been conditioned to believe that that's what they want, because again, these are very powerful systems, or they were very powerful systems, and these corporations put tons of money and tons of research into manipulating our consciousness so that we would want their product and be willing to pay thousands and thousands of dollars for it, for a purse, right? It's like, how did they get people to do that? That's not a natural human inclination, to take a month's wage, and like drop it on a handbag. Or a pair of shoes, that you can only wear out on Saturday night, when you're not walking anywhere, because it makes it impossible to. I'm not only talking about women's shoes, like there's, plenty of stupid men's shoes out there too. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, so, abundance. And what does it mean for you? And this is the really cool thing about this coming age, is that this way of manipulating our consciousness won't work. Advertising won't work. It might still work on people born before 27, because we've been programmed by the background energy, and we're more tribal. The people born after 2027 are going to be much more individual, and the background energy in general is going to be very individual. And so there won't be a need in a certain way to program people to consume, right? It will be different. And again, we're already kind of seeing that. It's not going fast enough, but there's a ton of old people, and that's also a really big issue, that the largest segment of our population is by far the most heavily conditioned. And, they grew up in a time where there wasn't a lot of sophistication about how they can be manipulated, and they very firmly believe in what they believe in, even though it's patently not true. It doesn't really help anybody. But they're all frequency holders, right? So as long as the baby boomers are here, and they're all living a very long time, this is going to be something we're going to have to contend with. So let's take a crack at this. Let's see what kind of abundance is actually available to anyone viewing this at any time. So there's like a primary system that I'm tracking here that again doesn't exist, but the conditioning is still there, and people are still acting from that habitual place of being conditioned by this system and how it's affecting their central nervous system and their outlook on life. And we're all, made in the image of our Creator, so we're all creators in our own way, and it's our consciousness that's literally holding this world together, giving it its continuity and its, stability. Because when we get right down to the physics of it, this table is mostly empty, right? It's just space. And so why I perceive, it's solid because I perceive it as solid. When I put my fingers together, I have the experience of touch, but the particles that are a part of my skin on either side are actually repelling each other. They're actually not touching at all. It's the field that's being generated by all these little electromagnetic particles that's giving me this, sensation of touch, but they're not actually touching. Yeah, and so like I said, our consciousness in general has been heavily conditioned to generate a certain kind of reality and to have a certain kind of relationship with abundance. There's something about the banking, like this international banking, because we have to believe in money, right? Because money is just as much a legal fiction as anything. I mean, we can literally use anything as a currency, and literally everything has been used as currency. Salt used to be currency. In some Pacific islands, it was a certain type of shell. Gold and silver, obvious. But yeah, we could put a store of value on almost anything. Like most famously, tulips in the Netherlands in the 16 or 1700s. There was like a big tulip boom, and then it was a bubble that just sort of burst. And a lot of people lost their life savings because they invested heavily in tulips. So anyway, so basically what we're working on is the conditioning we all have around money, right? And the way that we make money very real. And it's like confusing at the same time because we're constantly being pushed away from the tangible part of it, right? Like everything's digital. And then being pushed even further into digital currency space, right? Like Bitcoin. But obviously, all these banks are trying to put out their own digital currency that can be programmed so that you can only spend it on certain things, and that's their mission, right? That's their stated outcome that they're all looking for is to have a digital currency that is programmable, and to remove any and all fiat currency from circulation as a currency, as a store of value. I really do get they're not going to be able to make that work. I've never felt like that is a reality that we're going to see. I know they're trying and they're going to continue to try, but I don't think it's going to go. Doesn't feel true for me. But there's still a lot of pressure, right? There's a lot of pressure, and that pressure is also about abundance. If you go into the crypto space right now, everyone's, there's just, pressure. This is the future. Enjoy being poor. If you haven't bought Bitcoin yet, you're going to really hate yourself when it goes to, 200,000 or whatever. And it's nothing against Bitcoin or any of these things. Right? I'm not invested. I don't have any crypto. For me personally, I don't really like the feeling of it. But it's not about judgment. It's just to say, if it's going to work, it needs to work on the individual level, and it needs to work based on an awareness of abundance. The same way that my consciousness is holding this table together and making it seem like I can touch it, it's that same thing. It's like, where's the value? It's good for me to have this table. I could put my stuff on it. It's handy. Can crypto be that? Can there be a currency, a store of value that allows us the same kind of distance at the same time, right? That it's not so all-encompassing. It's just something that's there that we can use when we need it, and when we don't need it, we don't really think about it. After this podcast is over, I'm going to walk out of this room, and I'm not going to think about it again until I come back in. And I think there's something about that, in the sort of abundance space. Like, it's very precious, talking about abundance and value. And it's interesting too, because right now, and I didn't bring a chart for it, but right now we have the 2644 channel activated in terms the sun's in the 26th gate and Venus is in the 44th, and that makes the channel of the transmitter. And So collectively, there's defined heart and defined spleen right now, because that's the two centers that are connected by this channel. And the heart's literally about value. Most people have an open heart. 66% of the population has an open heart center. So having a defined heart right now gives people an opportunity to sort of consistently connect with what their value is, what they're here to prove about themselves and their value. The ability to connect with will, like the will to, in this case with the 26 gate, it's the will to like transmit. It's a salesman channel, the 2644. But it's a good, it can be corrupted, it can be ugly, right? It can be manipulative, 100%. It can be tricky. It's a salesman, but on the shadow side, it's like a con artist. Someone who's very good at reading people and what they need, and making it about kind of extracting something from them. But it can be the other side too, where it's like, I got something you're really going to like. Let me show it to you. That's the sort of positive side of this. So with the heart center being activated globally, there's a lot more access to will, and to kind of just like put stuff out there, stuff that you believe in, stuff that you enjoy, stuff that you think other people might really like. And then with the 44th gate being defined in the spleen, we get access to the spleen. The spleen isn't as rare in terms of its activation, probably more like 50-50. With the spleen, it's about survival, it's about security, it's about fear, but it's about being able to kind of let things go, right? To sort of know when something is good or right for you, and if it's not, to say goodbye to it. So with a defined spleen globally right now, we have the opportunity to leave things behind, that are no longer serving. There's the chance that you will leave something behind that does still serve, because that energy is there, right? So yeah, mistakes can be made. People can remove themselves from things that they actually still need when the spleen gets defined globally like this. But yeah, so also, for me personally, my moon and Neptune are in the 26th gate. I have Moon Neptune conjunct in Sagittarius. The Sun and the Moon are both in Sagittarius currently. We have a new moon today, and the new moon was at 20 degrees Sagittarius, and my Moon Neptune conjunction is at 22 degrees and 21 degrees, respectively. So I'm getting really kind of hammered by this, and it's felt a bit weird, but yeah, it's an opportunity for me to kind of take all this like transmitter energy and really really put something out there, something that people will need and resonate with, and that's what we're doing here today. Hi Frankie, I see you joined us. Thank you so much. I'll get to your design in just a moment. Okay, so let's see what we can do. See what needs to be transmitted. And it really just is. It's just like there's a new signal or a different signal that needs to come in and take the place of the old signal that this banking cartel, for since the 1500s or so, right, has been like really working on just getting people to accept their currency, their authority. Like the Federal Reserve is neither federal nor a reserve, right? It's like it's a bank, it's a private bank, and once you start to become aware of that, and that every country's central bank is a private bank that lends money to the government at interest, that's it really blows their cover. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple, really. It's just about, highlighting where in the nervous system people's influence is, and it's deep in their survival territory. So we are really looking at like the spleen and how quickly people are willing to compromise themselves. How quickly people will deny something that obviously works for them or is obviously very good for them because because of money. They have to go work a job. There's all sorts of things that people do because of the actions of this cartel and the energy system that is a part of it, and they're also very aware of what they're doing in terms of how they manipulate the consciousness of the collective and move huge groups of people into different positions. And that's the 44th gate in the spleen. The 44th gate, it's the personnel manager. It's like either putting people where you want them or putting people where they will thrive. And we have been put where we are wanted, not where we are going to thrive, by and large. So tapping into the central nervous system, and we're going into the thoracic, going into the 11th vertebrae of the thoracic spine. And so I guess there's some kind of connection here between this vertebrae and the splenic awareness, the survival, the security, and just that being sort of that part of our code, being heavily manipulated up until now. Yeah, because, it's like we don't need to, moving forward, we don't need to do what other people have told us or what institutions have told us or what we think, because it's our mind as well that really messes with us, right? What we think we need to do in order to get the money, in order to get the security, because our mind can only work with what it's been told. It's not working with all the sort of potentials that exist for us, right? It helps us do the thing once we kind of set ourselves in that direction. But when the mind makes it, kind of gives us that sense of direction, then we can really get screwed up. Yeah. So, okay. So just going, like I said, going into the 11th vertebrae of the thoracic spine and just like removing all the conditioning that exists there. And that seems to be the target area for this particular system. And there's something very specific about that vertebrae, and I'll have to do some research on it later. Maybe I'll talk about it more next week about why this vertebrae is coming in, or why this particular part of the spine and central nervous system is so important to the spleen and survival and security and all this. There's always connections when they come up, but yeah, everybody who's been conditioned by the kind of global banking cartel to have a certain kind of relationship with money, currency, and the sort of willingness to give up on themselves in order to attain those things, and that there's like no way to attain it without also kind of giving up parts of yourself. And further on that, the conditioning about, that it's necessary to give up parts of yourself because they're useless or they're immature, or, I got to grow up, I got to get serious, I got to go do this or that or the other thing. And I mean, maybe that's true for some people, but again, like, it needs to be an authentic sense. It can't be something that something else is telling you, so you feel bad about yourself, you feel guilt, you feel shame, here I am 30 years old, I don't have, I'm not gonna have enough for retirement, I don't have enough for a family, I can't buy a house, all this, like, I need to go work in finance, or, I need to give up my dream of, whatever, being like a river guide, because I need to get serious. you know. And again, maybe that's true, but it needs to be authentic when you make that decision. It needs to feel correct. And that's really what's being messed with, is people's ability to discern what is correct for them, to feel the correctness of their actions and move based on that feeling, instead of the mental pressure of, well, there's no security, right? Well, there is no security, right? And that's what we're being shown. There's security in the moment, right? We can be safe in the moment, but the security that was promised, well, I mean, it hasn't really been available for my whole life anyway, Okay, yeah. So just removing all this conditioning as much as possible to anyone, viewing this or on the receiving end of this, because there's going to be people who have no idea that they're being worked on while I'm working on them, and that's okay too. All right. Yeah, so this is just like step one. I'll probably be doing something like this every week, just like a little bit of work on removing the conditioning from these systems. Since I can't work on the systems directly anymore, I can still work on the shared conditioning that most people are going to have. Okay. There's just one thing I'm gonna get to Frankie. So Frankie has given me her human design, and I'm gonna take a look at her chart shortly. But I did want to put up something that's kind of interesting, because I was getting a lot. John, can you put up that chart that I sent you? Thank you. So this is December 15th, 9 a.m. in Mountain Standard Time. And I just really got because things have felt kind of stuck, a little, like the energy's been a little depressed. I felt like, almost like too normal in a certain way. And I just felt like something's coming. I can feel it, and I really just got that it was the 15th. So I went and looked at what the 15th was going to look like, and it happens to be a reflector day. I don't know how long the reflector design is going to be active, but at 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time on December 15th, the design is that of a reflector. Reflectors are very interesting. They're the rarest type. It's only 1% of the population, and they don't have authority per se. So, generators have sacral authority or emotional authority. There's splenic authority. There's the self-projected authority of the G center. There's the ego authority of the heart center. These are all things that can be relied on. This is all like ways of navigating using our consciousness, right? Using the authority that our human design chart shows where that authority is. Reflectors they don't really have authority because they don't have any definition. So their authority is their decision-making process is gonna be very much based on the lunar cycle. So for a reflector, it's actually best for them to wait like a full lunar cycle before they decide on something, before they say yes or no to something. I mean, that's a little extreme, and I don't really know how that would work. I haven't really met too many reflectors, and the ones I have met just seem to be kind of normal, so I don't know exactly how they're supposed to live that way, but that's what they say in the human design. But it is interesting, right? It's a really interesting thing, and the moon at that time is in the 60th gate, along with Pluto, both in the third line actually. And as it would have it, the third line's a lot about money. When you have a third line in your profile, or you have a third line in, and there's actually a lot of third lines on the design Sun Earth. Third lines on the personality North-South node, third line Moon, third line Pluto, third line Neptune. Tremendous amount of third lines. A lot of third line energy. Third line design Venus. Third line design Moon. A lot of third lines. Third line Jupiter on the design side. Third line Saturn on the design. That's crazy. I didn't even notice that up until now. So the 60th gate is about limitation, right? But it's, and the 60th gate connects to the third gate, which will probably come in later that day in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, so you could look, Friday something's going to pop. I don't know, something financial, I would say. But there's opportunity there, right? There will be an opening. It's a good day to move forward, even though you'll feel like you don't have the resources, even though you'll feel like you're limited, you still got to find a way to work it. And the limitation is a gift because it will show you where you have to go, and what you have to use while you're moving in that direction. Yeah, so it should be an interesting day, and I really wanted to bring people's awareness to that. I guess we'll all find out sort of in real time, what goes on. I don't think it's going to be a global thing per se. I think it's going to be a very personal thing. It's also, interestingly enough, we get into it's like the first line of the gate, of the Cross of Eden. The Cross of Eden is about kind of recognizing how, in a certain way, like recognizing how bad things are so that they can get better, finding your own little slice of paradise somewhere, because there's so much not paradise out there. So people born under the Cross of Eden, that's basically their life's work is to create their little slice of paradise somewhere. And then, depending on their profile and everything, it will be like just for them or something that they share. It will depend. Okay, so let's take a quick look at Frankie's design. I'm just going to pull this up very quick.
Are you going to send that to me?
Yes.
Email, text?
I will email. And I must have used a different thing. It's good. It gives me a chance to kind of reset while I'm looking for this. Not there either. Oh, okay. All right, bear with me. I don't have it. All right, Frankie, I'm sorry. I thought I punched in your design, but I do not have it coming up at the moment, so I will connect with you privately, and I will go over your design with you. Apologies for that. But that's fine. That's fine. We're kind of coming to the end of our time anyway. So yeah, I think this is fine. This is a fine time to just sort of end it here. And yeah, have a good week. Stay safe out there. And I'll see you next time, and we'll go over what's transpired, and should be interesting. So bye for now.